So my background is I'm a ballroom dancer. So you are visible as that dancer, so you have to be in shape, always the smile, the pristine look of everything, always sitting with good posture that my mother taught me since I was a child. You have that time where you want to shut the door, shut the curtain, and just be alone and be quiet. That became a very, very private piece of my life, especially after my son was born. That was absolutely my world. And so, yes, I did become invisible and wore baggy clothes. I didn't want to be seen anymore, and I just became Kai's mom. I had a very strict upbringing. My parents were very, very protective. So I had to live up to an expectation from my mother. There's no boys are allowed to call. And with my mother, I was not allowed, believe it or not, to go to dances. And I became a ballroom dancer.
And at that point, Mum didn't know what you were doing?
She just would see some credit card statements coming from New York City and not sure what was going on. I went through a period of my life where I felt like I was taking care of everybody. My father had already passed. I was taking care of my family, my aunt, my uncle, my mother, and everybody's other needs. And forgetting about myself. In that moment, that was the beginning of that pushback of, why are you continuing to hide?
In England, we're very much contained. What can we learn as British women who feel that we shouldn't be seen, we shouldn't be heard? What can we learn from you, from your culture? I'd like to kind of delve into a little bit about why women getting visible. Was there a time in your life where you felt that you weren't visible?
So my background is I'm a ballroom dancer. So you are visible as that dancer, so you have to be in shape, always the smile, the pristine look of everything, always sitting with good posture that my mother taught me since I was a child. And you're always on that stage. But just like an actor, whether it's film or stage, you have that time where you want to shut the door, shut the curtain, and just be alone and be quiet. So that became a very, very private piece of my life, especially after my son was born, because I had my son a little later in life. Career was number one. When he came along, that was my world. That was absolutely my world. And so, yes, I did become invisible. I also lost my feminine ballroom shape and wore baggy clothes. I didn't want to be seen anymore, and I just became Kai's mom. And that's really a wonderful title. But as he's gotten older and needed me less, it was, what do I want to do now? And this year alone, I have actually lost 30 pounds. And I decided it's time for me to become visible.
I think there are women that are listening to this who are going to really connect with what you said about when you have children and suddenly your whole world changes, your image changes, your life as your child or your children, and we do dress differently. And when we come out of that, it's like we've now got to reinvent ourselves. And that's really what you were describing. It's the reinvention of yourself from being mum to becoming Christina again. But what does that look like? And I think a lot of women are sitting in that space at the moment thinking, my life is changing. Either, I'm in my 40s and my kids are now, young, they're going to school, but what do I do with my time? What do I do with my life? Do I go back to my career? How do I reinvent myself? Or they may be slightly older like myself, and your kids are going off to university, and then you have a real empty nest. And what do we do? Oh, if anyone's listening to this and they're seriously feeling down in the dumps, because you must have been at that place, what was the one thing that got you out of bed that morning and thought, this is my time and I'm going to change?
Age.
Okay.
Because again, I woke up with the idea that here comes the next big zero, and I'm not where I thought I was going to be at this point in my life. Have I done things that I've enjoyed in my life? Yes, but I thought it was going to be so much more. And each zero that comes in our lives, starting at 20, is like, oh, okay. Next one comes along, okay. And you realize the only person who's going to get it done for you is you. And so that really was a wake-up call for me. And I took my dream vacation with my family to Tahiti.
Amazing.
I put my camera up and I filmed what I wanted to do next.
Oh, wow.
And I
okay.
didn't even realize, I looked at it 3 months later and I said, wow, I have actually planned it all out. It was here and in here. And then I voiced it and I was making it happen. And that's, we talk about manifestation, right? And really putting it out, because until it's spoken, nothing starts to move. Sharing those secrets between one another that you don't know how to move forward until you actually verbalize it sometimes.
I totally get where you're at there. And I think it is true. And, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, manifesting, it's just about calling out a dream. It's not. It's about speaking a truth that sits inside of you. And a lot of people talk about journaling and writing things down. You know, I think you and I are very vocal people, and I think that's where we have that shared passion. And I speak a lot of my truth and I put things out there to the community, and maybe things aren't happening now, but I'm on that journey. I've started that journey. I've put myself forward. And I think the message is really clear here. If you are thinking things in your head, get it out, speak it to a friend, speak it to somebody who you trust, or just film yourself. It could be your private sort of video diary. Keep a video diary. You know, often enough we see all these TikToks and social media and people talk, but you don't have to put it out there on social media. You can just speak it. And it could be that, you know, I feel really crap today and I want to change my life. And I'm going to think about how I'm going to change my life. Your next video diary is you set yourself a goal. What is it that I'm going to change? Then speak it out there, because I think that's really powerful. If you are enjoying Real Women's Stories and this episode, why not hit the like button and follow and subscribe so you never miss another episode? Can we talk a little bit about mom and dad and, you know, what life was like for you growing up?
I had a very strict upbringing, very, very strict. Being a girl, for one, my parents were very, very protective. And my mother is Filipino and she was valedictorian. She came to the States. She was a pediatrician. And so she had a stronger, harder journey. So I had to live up to an expectation from my mother. Mind you, very, I'm trying to find the right word. So there's a lot of times where, because of her culture and her status, you sit, you're quiet, you listen, but you don't make a sound, which was really even more of a generation of the grandparents. But still, that was very much instilled in my mother. Don't wiggle, sit still. And you just have to be there. So in many ways, yeah, you're a child. The wonderful thing about my parents is they were both had a little bit of a creative touch. They both played music. And they encouraged me in my artistic endeavors. So while I was quietly sitting, if there was pen and paper around, I was drawing. I was doing something to keep my mind busy and my hands busy versus just sitting on them. So, yeah. And being a girl, my father was very, very protective. So it was limited. There's no boys are allowed to call, not until I'm 30, which will happen any day now. And with my mother, I was not allowed, believe it or not, to go to dances. And I became a ballroom dancer.
Wow.
But which was good to her because it has lots of rules. Okay. So you can dance with a set of rules.
But how did you get into ballroom dancing? So you're this quiet, silent, meticulous child who is allowed to be creative in a very contained environment. And we obviously know this is because of cultural backgrounds. This wasn't because of anything else. And then you get into ballroom dancing. Was it you who asked to get involved, or was it mum that suggested it? How did that transpire?
That is very interesting because when I look back at I've always loved to dance. My whole journey. I didn't grow up dancing. I'd asked to do it. My mother said, no, you need to work on your studies. She expected all A's from me. That was, if you have a B, you're staying home to study. So in high school, on the public broadcasting station, the PBS, the ballroom champions would come on. And we would watch ones from the UK, we'd watch the ones in America. And whatever we were doing, the two of us would sit and watch it together. When I was in university, my mother would call me and say, the championships are on. I'd be in the middle sometimes of exams and I'd stop and I'd watch it. And I said, I'm going to do that someday. But funny enough, my creativity came. I went into school for business and fashion design. I loved that piece, to create anything that I could. I was actually a club kid back in the early 90s with the big wigs, the bright colors, everything techno.
This is why I know we connected. Because my background was quite similar in terms of dancing in clubs, and I loved house music. So you went from, I'm just trying to picture this, you went from this very studious, contained child to going to college. Did you go to college? You studied fashion.
Fashion and business, and I changed to psychology.
Okay. And then you got into this kind of dancing in the club scene.
Yes.
And at that point, mum didn't know what you were doing?
And not really. She just would see some credit card statements coming from New York City and not sure what was going on. And once in a while, when we go out, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. We would go out there as well and get dressed up. And she really just wouldn't say anything, just more or less, what time are you coming home? We went after I graduated from college to the Philippines to go visit all of our family, because most of her family still lives there. Most of my family still lives there. And a cousin asked, do you want to go dancing? And I am thinking we're going to hit a club. And I said, yes, a resounding yes, let's go. Now, I don't have any proper clothes that I would wear, but, I'm not sure where I'm going. So I dressed as fancy without being over the top. And it was a ballroom dance club. And that was the start. And as I was dancing, they have people who come around to the tables who you hire and will dance the cha-chas, the tangos, the swing dancing. And I was doing it so easily that everybody at the table of our family, you've done this before. I said, I've never done this before. But it came to me so easily. But that was the beginning of the journey onto my next piece of ballroom for the next 20 years.
Wow. What a journey. And so you studied in the Philippines and then went over to the States.
Yeah.
And pursued your dancing career in the States.
Yes.
That's a big culture change as well. And just, thinking about women getting visible. And you've obviously explained that there was that time. Do you feel that the driver was that little girl that sat there and had to be silenced?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I've always had this living large inside of me. I can take back a moment of my life, and I'm laughing about this one. At 6 years old, my aunt and uncle went to Hawaii, and they brought back a hula skirt in the flower lace. And I danced around the room, and my father played his guitar. And I just had so much fun being in the middle of everyone laughing. And again, you're 6 years old, so it doesn't matter if you're being just laughed at or they just think you're adorable. You don't really know. You're just having fun. And so that moment still comes to my mind because it was, oh, I can do something that's not being yelled at to sit down, but be presented. And yeah, I really enjoyed that opportunity to be presented. In my town where my mother comes from, we also have what's called fiestas every year, every August. And back when I went to the Philippines in that same year that I'm speaking of, my uncle said, "Why don't you come and dance and do a presentation?" I said, "I can't do that." He's like, "Yeah." So here in this town of 20 to 30,000 people, I am in the middle of their arena with a song that I loved at the time, 100% by Crystal Waters.
Love a bit of Crystal Waters.
And I just did a freestyle mix of dance all by myself.
Amazing.
And so I have always loved that space. So it's so much fun though to be able to share. I mean, it's one thing, I love to be center of attention, but if it's just me, it loses something. And so that's where the joint piece of wanting to
Okay.
share others and sharing voices and sharing stories of, well, what amazing things have you done?
Because I was actually going to ask you that question, like this movement that you're creating. And I was going to say to you, like, why now? Why you? Why do you feel that you want to do this? Why not somebody else?
We all have our own experiences and uniquely our own experiences. When I got into podcasting, someone said to me, one of the things that is wonderful about podcasters is we can talk about the same thing, but our journey is different in how we got there. So how you're getting visible and your real women's stories and how I'm getting visible with women's health, wealth, and happiness and women getting visible is different stories. And here we are sitting in St. Albans having coffee and filming a podcast. It really is a mission, and I can't explain it. It's this driving force that wakes me every morning, that I go on to LinkedIn and say, who connected with me overnight? And I go and I take a look at them and I offer a chat. Let's not just be connected on LinkedIn, but I want to know who you are. Who's the person behind the picture? And one, are you real?
When one of your women suddenly become visible that you bring into your community, how do they feel?
Seen, heard, valued. That's really what we're working on. To be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. Because the value is even more important. Your validity, your person who is on this earth, your legacy. What is that you've come here to learn, and what can you share with your story? It's just mind-blowing.
In America, and there are cultural differences, from what I see, and I see you light up, and I see you have a voice, and I see you speak. In England, we're very much contained, and I speak to people and I chat to people and they love it and they engage with you, but I'm doing that. I don't see everybody else doing that. What can we learn as a society, as British women who feel that we shouldn't be seen, we shouldn't be heard? What advice could you give? Like, what can we learn from you, from your culture?
I love that. Just ask. It's simple as that, because you're already expecting a no. So just ask. It's like asking someone for a dance. Back to the ballroom world. You're waiting to be asked, and you can sit all night long if you're waiting to be asked. But if you want to dance, you need to get up sometimes and ask to dance. So you'll be so surprised by all the yeses.
If there's one piece of your life that you could vulnerably share, would you share that, and what would it be?
I think it's more about my own personal, emotional struggle than anything. And I think of a conversation that comes to my mind, and I still get angry when I hear it. I was 41 and I had a gentleman ask me, "What do you think your biggest accomplishment in life was?" I said, "Confidence." And he stepped back and he said, "Really? I thought it would be being a mother." Yeah. And I was taken aback by that. I'm like, no offense to women, but Many of us have gone through it. So it's something that we do. But to be able to step up with my own confidence and say, wow, I went through a period of my life where I felt like I was taking care of everybody. You know, again, my father had already passed. I was taking care of my family, my aunt, my uncle, my mother, you know, and everybody's other needs. And forgetting about myself, completely forgetting about myself. I was drowning myself in my studio life and in my dance life and in that invisible, in those four walls. I love to travel and I always love to get out of that. So it allows me that freedom. But I didn't have the confidence. And I had my son, which suddenly became a tiger. And I think in that moment, that was the beginning of that pushback of, why are you continuing to hide? And as you're meeting other moms along the way and you're saying, okay, let's chat, let's bring our kids for a play date. And you start to navigate, who am I at this stage? Because it's a new stage. And you stop caring so much what other people think. So if your hair is in a ponytail, or if you have food spit up on you, you stop caring about those things that you cared about so much of, oh, is my makeup right? Is my hair right? Are these the shoes that go with my bag, that go with my dress? That are so shallow when it comes down to who we are. It's just the face of who we are. But having that confidence in myself and building that every day of saying, you know what? I have time for you, but if I don't take time for me first, I have nothing to give you. If I'm not taking care of the engine of this vehicle and there's no fuel, I can't go anywhere. I'm in place. And when I stopped to actually realize that I had been taking care of everybody, making sure I'm meeting you for lunch, I'm calling you before breakfast, I'm making sure, you know, the laundry is done, whatever it is. That's when I stopped and say, who cares if the laundry's done? Sorry, I can't meet for lunch this week. Mom, I can't call you this morning because I have a meeting. And taking care of number one. And I don't know what the switch is that really pushed me. But again, I think it was a number. If I have this one glorious life right now to live, am I making the most of it? Am I making impact? Does this moment right now mean something? And right now, yes, because I can walk away saying, I met a wonderful woman today. We had an amazing conversation. And if I had to never see you again, did I make some impact in your life? Did I tell you something that you didn't know? And vice versa. Did I learn something from you that I can take away from my life and share with somebody and say, wow, I didn't know this. And now this woman who's gone through her own trials of life to become the sparkling woman that she is now, from that quiet little English girl.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I teared up a little bit when you were saying that. I was like, yeah, I get it. I get it. And I think that, you know, that is just such a powerful message, such a powerful story and emotion that you've shared. If somebody, one of my community that is thinking, well, how do I get visible? Now, they may not want to be on a podcast, they may not want to be on camera. How can someone become visible without being in, let's say, the limelight, so to speak, in their general lives?
That is another wonderful question, because one of the things that I've discovered as I have been on this visibility journey for myself and learning what other people are looking at is, one, there is the I love the camera, I want to be out there. But the second one is I'm not interested, just like you mentioned, community. Being part of a community, the community that you're building, the community I'm building, so that they're the expert, they're the go-to person. But it's also being able to share, oh, I have done this. I have written a book and this is what it's about. Maybe it's a pain that I've been through. It's a lesson I've learned. And it might not have anything to do with their daily work, but it's something that they can share in a community. Getting to know people and just having that chat, I think is so important, but community is so important. I belong easily, I think, to 5 when I think about it, of in-person as well as worldwide Zoom communities that I go to meetings, and taking sometimes those opportunities just to speak up and say hello, even if they're not the spotlighted person, but, oh, this is what I do and this is what I'm an expert at. And I think that's another interesting thing. If you can say what you're an expert at. I did this by pure accident, and I caught myself and I laughed when I was talking to a woman who was actually on the recent podcast that I did. And she said, "What would you say your expertise is?" And I said, "I'm an expert at communication." And I shocked myself. And she's like, "Okay." And I'm like, wow. And why do I say that? Because, well, ballroom dancing, you have to be able to communicate as a partner. As an interviewer on podcasts, you have to be able to communicate and find out what is the story that we're trying to share. And another communication that we learn is from children. Having taught dance to children, having our own children and being able to speak their language so nobody's getting frustrated, but being able to share, okay, let's figure out what is not working here. So communication is absolutely the key.
And I think as well, just to add on to that, becoming visible, I think if I'm in a world without cameras, without media, is about being visible at home, being visible as not just a wife and a mum or a partner, but being your own person, having your voice, having ownership of things that you enjoy doing, and that you're not afraid to explore new things, new opportunities, new friends, new relationships. That, I think, is also about being visible. You've talked about, your ballroom dancing and being visible within that environment where you created this character. When you stepped away from that, and when you truly stepped into becoming yourself as a visible woman, how did that feel?
Frightening. Honestly frightening, because having gone from the ballroom world to put the camera on to then start communicating with people. I'll actually tell you a little story. When I decided it was time to go back out, that I was stepping away from the camera, because it's easy to sit behind the camera and have interviews with people on Zoom because, well, they're on the other side and I'm in my room. But I went to a community women's gathering. It's about half an hour from my house. And I went to a county over versus the county that I live in, because the county I live in is actually very, very intimidating. So a lot of women who are connected to women who are connected in Washington, D.C., powerhouse women. So I went a county up to go to women who were a little less intimidating, to show up and sit in a room full of women I had no idea who they were. I was sweating. I was shaking, and I'm slowly breathing, the famous box breathing.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned that I was a podcaster. I stood up. I said, as everybody's talking, I'm not listening to anything anybody else is saying, but I'm a producer and a podcast host, and here I am. One of the gals who was on the opposite side of the room at the end of the meeting came running over to introduce herself. "I would love to be on a podcast." What a moment. Again, had I not shown up as myself, as this newfound podcaster, as this newfound person, even to say the words, "I am a podcaster," I had to actually think about those words to say, "I am a podcaster. Who am I now?" And someone to volunteer their time to give me an interview is mind-blowing. And can I say, we are still good friends to this day. This gal makes me laugh. But she has done the same thing. She has put herself out there and met these women in community because she started her business from scratch, coming from her own military and then corporate background. And so I've listened to her wise words about how to navigate. Again, something I wouldn't have known, because then she said, why don't you come to this meeting here that's closer to where we live? Because she was also outside of the county. And I showed up knowing she was going to be there. So it was a little bit of a crutch, but because of her, I was able to show up feeling a little more confident, that little push from someone.
So it's like the ripple effect. And I guess that's probably where I came from as well, because suddenly you step into, who am I going to be? What am I going to say? And I had to do a lot of work on myself with my own coach to gain the confidence to say, I'm a podcast host. I'm, I'm a coach, and I help all these women make huge changes in their lives, and own it. And it is scary and it is fearful, but look at you and look at me. And I think if you just speak up and just find that moment of clarity of, I can do this, because no one wants you to fail. That's the biggest thing as well. Everybody, and you'll find your people, because people will go, oh my God, she's been brave enough to step out there and say it. And I want to feel some of that.
Exactly. And it's the energy. It is that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Because showing up there, again, with a new set of women than the first set. And now we're getting into the intimidating women. So closer to where I live. And now the next group. So I joined this group. Now I joined the next community, because I would get another invitation from a woman in this community to say, come to this luncheon with me. And so building that community has been incredible. And I didn't know that the support that I'd be getting is already sitting there waiting for me.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, that you don't realize that there is support around you. If there's one thing that you would like to leave us with today, what would it be?
Go meet somebody new today. Whether it's online or whether it's in person, say hello. Take the opportunity to learn something new that you didn't know from somebody you didn't know. Share that smile with the clerk, whether it's the coffee shop or at the grocery store, the supermarket. Say hello, because you'll never know what you might learn and who you might get connected to because of that simple hello.